little more. We're gonna figure out this one. We're gonna figure it out. What were the other ones I just gave to you guys? Do you remember?
Something about a bunker, something about someone eating deer meat.
Oh, the deer meat one's really good, actually. That'd be a good one. I forgot about the deer meat one. That was the one that you wanted, wasn't it, Dan?
Yes,
I
Tangled is here.
Nice. I think you'll like the deer meat one. I had to find it. My dad ate meat from a deer that walked on two legs. Yes. Okay, so now I gotta find the creepypasta. My dad. I love you. Okay. All right, here we go. Tanner reading stories. What'd you cook?
My balls.
Okay. Bye. What'd you cook?
We just made a bunch of cupcakes from scratch.
Nice. What type? Alex actually made banana bread today. Surprise.
Just
Everyone's baking.
basic. Uh, we hollowed out one of them
Yeah,
and
what's the
put
color?
colored icing in it.
What's the color?
You should know.
Pink.
Yes.
Yeah, Alex is jealous, so don't worry. I know. I've I've been knowing. Some part of me just wants to believe you're lying.
Okay.
Okay.
Think that then.
If you were to have a boy, would you name it Rayo Wumbo Uggles
I'll name him Francis.
Colvin? Francis Colvin Gibson?
Francis Colvin Gibson.
Crazy.
Dang, it's kind of a strong name.
That is kind of a buff ass name. You'd have to make him work out. All right.
Buff. That's name.
Streaming this one because I got people watching this one, so here we go. If at any point you wish to not listen to it, cool. This is my dad ate meat from a deer that walked on two legs. Now he's acting kind of strange. The party was 2 weeks ago. I stole a few beers and the adults were looking. I shared them with Lucy Stinkins. Stinkins? Sitkins. Sorry. Sitkins from around the crowd. She drank her greedily as beneath the bough of a low tree, speaking so low that no passengers could hear us by. Or could hear. Jesus Christ. This is a weird one. I only heard the cries, and both of us were sitting up knife in the branches. By the time we got back to the party, the adults were escorting the kids away from the ambulance sirens and fast approaching. Dad was there. He told me to take my little sister home. The grim and frightening look on his face made me forget Lucy and the smell of beer on her breath. I had to remember. Did she eat from the barbecue? Sometimes I think she didn't. Other times I swear I can picture her biting into a burger. It's so vivid that I think it must be a memory. It's moved either way. I'll never see her again. I felt gross when I went to school the next day. I asked around if the stories of her and her dad were true. When my father got home late from the party that night, he hadn't spoken to me or my mom. Just went to bed. He didn't tell us what happened. Good morning, I saw the older kids by the school gates. I overheard them talking. The details made my stomach churn. I wanted to know more. I didn't act all excited about something terrible, but this felt like this kind of thing that people will be talking about for years. Larry Sitkins had swallowed a beer can, shoved it down his throat like a damn boa constrictor eating an egg. At least that's how one of the kids described it to me. There was more, of course. He'd praised Satan before slitting his own throat. He'd gotten pissed drunk, fallen hard into the ground before chugging a beer. He'd tried to catch a can mid-air. Somehow, someone had punched him mid-slip. There were a lot of variations on what happened. How? There were only theories that got turned into rumors. A lot of us were trying to make sense of it. Larry was a pretty run-of-the-mill guy. He was a landscaper who made jokes at kids' birthday parties. He was about nondescript as they come, at least as much of us teenagers were concerned. We got halfway through the day before Mr. Straub shut the bleachers on his neck. It was in front of the cheerleaders. There were ambulances again, crying girls and boys. Some of the crying people were even teachers. Most of them just looked confused, except Mr. Straub. I just kept a glimpse of him before I jogged over to find out what all the screaming was about. He looked empty of all thoughts and emotions. His head was just a crooked angle. I figured that's how people must look when they're dead. But apparently, he had been that way during the act. Walked up, perched his neck, slat between the benches, hit the remote button, and slide the bleachers closed. The whole time, he was just slack-jawed, stupid-looking. Even as the metal mechanism crouched vertebrae over cartilage. I later learned that Larry had been like this too, when he killed himself. He was getting ready to pop the tab on a fresh beer when he simply stopped. He looked up to the sky and forced the whole beer can down his throat without a single word-shattering moment. I didn't know it back then, but there were others like Larry and Mr. Straub. A barista in the coffee shop steamed half the skin off her arm while keeping eye contact with the guy in drive-thru. A doctor at a local clinic used a biopsy needle to inject air straight through his heart. Lots of people shot themselves, but not one of them aimed for the fucking head. And that's what's weird. If you think about it. These people obliterated their torsos, they tore limbs, they high-powered rifles, they point blank. They never gave a reason offered. Just a vacant expression. They deleted bits of their bodies. Nothing left but ragged stumps. There was no school next day. That was the only real clue on about how panicked the local authorities were. Wouldn't be long before national authorities joined on the panic too, and well, that would come later. But that morning, my parents left the house at 9:30 for a meeting at the town hall. They dropped me off at my grandma's, and they headed that way, and I waited for them to leave before my grandma told me I was heading out. It was a hot day. She only nodded her approval as she sat waiting with my sister. She hated to see me play video games and always encouraged me to go make my own adventures outside, so I had no plans. Didn't even want to see any of my friends. See, I only thought about Mrs. Straub's face as I crossed empty farmers' fields and walked into the woods. I'd been an open casket funeral once. Father's dentist christened me as baby, but not that I remember anything about him, except the story of his face resting gently on the soft white folds of a casket's interior. See, that seems so long ago, but seemed so sterile. At the thought it was a bit sad. Not a whole lot else, but Mr. Straub's face had frightened me with his swollen lips, his bulging eyes. Alive one moment, but then dead the next. Only pain to separate the two. He looked so bored hanging there from his own broken neck, still wearing those ridiculous red shorts he always had on no matter what the weather. It took me no time to recognize that what I was seeing was a dead body, and it freaked me out. Felt like it shouldn't have messed with me as much as it did, but I guess it did, and that's why there was a little bit of anger mixed in with all those thoughts in my head. It's always why I pushed the thought through the woods until the trees began to thin, marching into the humid summer heat until my shirt was soaked. My legs ached. I wanted to feel tired. You see, I wanted the only thing I could think of were the throbbing hamstrings and the sunburnt forehead. But it ended when I reached the tracks. There were shaggy rocks and boulders. They rose steeply on both sides, opposite sides, but only in the ways to where it left the town were going right. And it led me into a dark tunnel, the mouth bristling with ivy, and at least the air coming from it was cold, so I took a second to stand by and catch my breath, feeling the sweat cool and evaporate as the winds billowed gently out against the darkness. I wasn't stupid, though. I paid close attention in case I heard the sound of any passing trains. I did hear one, and then I raced off the tracks as quick I could. It honked as it came past. Another day, and I might have worried that it might get me in trouble for playing on those rails, but all I could really think of was seeing what I'd seen lying by those tracks, been lit up by the train as it roared down the tunnel, not far from that entrance. In the strange silence after the train had gone, there was only a dim light of the setting sun to keep the inside of the tunnel. But everything looked the same. Old clothes, broken bottles, discarded crates, trash strewn around wherever it found space. Yeah,
I'm gonna switch over to the other server. I told Lex and them I'd play with them later.
Okay. Goodbye, Wyatt. I love you.
I love you too, boys.
Wyatt.
I'll be on tomorrow. Anytime really. I mean, I don't really have plans tomorrow, so if anyone's on and wants to play anything, I would be down.
I'll probably be on after like 11.
Okay, night.
Yeah.
Okay. I will probably be on as well.
All right, brother.
All right, brother man. Good night, fellas.
See ya.
Also, if you guys want me to stop at any point, just honk. It's honestly just also practice. Let's see. I think I'm right here. Oh. It took some time to recognize seeing a dead body freaked me out. Felt like it shouldn't have messed with me as much as it did. Or was I above? No. No, it was right here. It honked as it came past. Another day, no matter where it's been, I get trouble playing around. I see the man. He was okay. It honked as it came past. Another day, and I might have worried I might have got in trouble for playing on the rails. All I could really think of was the thing I'd seen laying by the tracks, lit up by the train as it came. I gotta get back into the voice. Roaring as it came out of the tunnel, not far from the entrance. The strange silence that the train had gone, only dim light of setting sun to see inside the tunnel. Everything looked the same. Old clothes, broken bottles, discarded crates, trash, thrown around in found spaces, but I knew what I seen in that harsh light. The train's passing beams. It was a hell of a lot more than garbage. I'd seen a man. He was lying face down. There'd never been a hand bright and pale like the moon in the night sky, I was sure of it. I didn't know what to do, not right away. Also, I'm going to do this, just so I know all my enunciations are getting through. He was laying face down, even though bright blah 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 blah. I'm sure of it. I didn't know what to do, not right away. I was afraid and I didn't want to go inside. But I couldn't just pretend I hadn't seen anything either. I tried shouting to them. If someone down there had heard me, they'd give no sign of it. Hey! It wasn't until I actually stepped into the darkness and my eyes adjusted I confirmed that there was really a man lying down there. He was draped across the tracks. He was draped across the tracks. But he didn't have any legs. Judging by the way the blood stains had turned the color of shit, he'd been down there a while. Hell, half a dozen goddamn trains might have run over him by the time. Just a bit of cloth. As if they saw anything at all. In that time he dried out just a little. It wasn't a mummy or anything, but the blood of his stumps and coming out of his mouth looked more like jelly than corn syrup. I was sobbing, crying so hard that I had to make sense of what to do. Also feeling like all this was terribly unfair to me, and there was a moment where I could almost feel myself wanting to be a kid again. A proper one. Little. One that doesn't have to do things. One that can get upset, scream, run away. I'd only just started to appreciate how badly I'd messed up by seeing Mr. Straub. And God wouldn't drop this kind of nightmare on my lap. This tea-stained black blood, open eyes that looked like nothing. It felt like a nightmare. Not just a moment with a body, but everything else too. Everything since the beer beneath the tree had felt like it wasn't part of reality anymore. But nightmares end. I was outside, gasping, vomiting. I was crying my damn eyes out when I heard something shuffle in the tunnel I just run out of. Part of me thought that sound must mean something. Something was alive. It was close. It meant I wasn't alone, but another part of me saw something else entirely. It wasn't the part of me that took over or stopped. It wasn't the part of me that was crying or making me hear more noise. My mouth turned dry as a desert, and all of a sudden I was no longer hot all over, but cold. I was freezing damn cold. My legs were backpedaling away from the tunnel. Short, quiet steps. The noise persisted. Some of my favorite lines in this whole story. The noise persisted. It was a shuffle of something getting dragged over gravel like old plastic bags. It had a rhythm. It had a rhythm to it that was so slow. The word that sprang from my mind was one I got taught in biology class just a long time ago. Locomotion. Something down there was moving towards me. Slow, broken, feeble. Didn't matter. Somehow, even though I knew I was completely insane, I just knew that this was going to be coming out of that tunnel. I knew that the way the rabbit knows the wolf, the way the ant knows the spider. But still, I saw him crawl out of the dark into the light, and I screamed so loud that I thought I had a sore throat for the next few days. The man on the tracks, even though he moved, he was not alive. I tried telling myself a couple days after that he'd been dead that only living things move. That was horseshit. He dragged his bloody, legless torso, lay desecrated across his back. I knew that dead thing. He wasn't alive. That made him some kind of impossible monster. turned and ran screaming through the trees. The whole time, all I could think of was driving behind me. When I was closing the distance, it didn't matter that I was slow. It didn't matter that I ran for over an hour. It didn't matter even I was sure that I made my way home, or even I was running in the right direction. All that mattered was that I was putting one foot in front of the other until there was nothing left inside me. Time turned funny. Seconds moved, strange staccatos, until I eventually collapsed on a legs made of rubber. Then I dragged myself into the old tree hollow, to hide, and I lost consciousness. Wow! Yippee! There's still more, but yippee! That's crazy.
What's gonna happen next?
Here we go. When I woke up, the sun had set. It was dark. I vomited, found my way beneath the beaten path. I stumbled across achingly through the cold night, back to Grandma's house. My dad was sick. This part gets really, really rough, actually. I'm gonna go grab some water.
Oh man,
What a time to be alive.
for real. I'm golfing with my friends.
Love to see that. Oh, wait, like, you mean the game?
Yes, sir.
I've actually never played with anyone on there before.
Liar.
I have.
Me.
We did.
Yeah.
I do not remember.
Cool, they have a worms course.
Oh, and now got friends who want to play Dale Dawson in a little bit. Uh, Give me the green light, 'cause I'm ready to go. Have a good time. What you waiting for? You only got one life, and we gon' live it up. And my fucking misery, and my fucking misery, and my fucking misery.
Let us continue. All right. Pop quiz. This young boy saw a decrepit old man. It's not a pop quiz. I'm just giving you a summary, actually. This young boy saw a decrepit old man doing what he calls locomotion, which was the old man was cut in half by his torso and still moving across the train tracks after this young boy had said he had probably been run over multiple times by a train. And he said that there was nothing inside of him, just the movement.
Hell yeah.
Circle back. This young boy also said there's a barbecue that his dad went to, that him and his dad went to, where he was talking to a girl. The girl's father, partially into this barbecue, shoved an entire beer can down his throat, killing him. Now we continue. Now you're caught up. That's the quick summary. Now you're caught up. This next part does get very fucking awesome and brutal. And I know you're probably both playing games, but I highly recommend. I'm going to try to do my best here. When I woke up, the sun had set and it was dark. I vomited some and found my way back to the beaten path, and I achingly stumbled through the cold night air back to the grandma's farmhouse. My dad was sick. This is where it starts to get crazy and brutal. So I get. Hoi! My grandma screamed something to the effect that she had held me down, or she had held him down with his right arm, while my mother tried to grip his head in her blood-slick hands. He resisted with dumb determination. My sister cried, watching the scene like a shell-shocked soldier. There was a grunting, a sobbing, and suddenly, a bang. Then a puff of plaster rained down onto my head. Everyone began to yell, and a shriek a little louder. My dad had a gun. That's what my grandma was trying to wrestle out of his hands. She held a knife. That's why there was blood. I didn't know whose it was. I wasn't sure what she was planning to do. Sorry. It's kind of hard to do these sentences whenever they're layered out the way they are. I wasn't sure what she was planning to do with it until she tried to use us to cut his finger off. The scuffle resulted in another bang. Window exploded outwards, and I finally ducked. I grabbed my sister, rushing into her room. There was 3 more explosions. Each one broke something inside me. By the time I heard my name being called, I was half deaf, twitching at things that weren't even there. My sister pleaded for me to come back. Her pinky fingers were just grasping for me. I put her down. My mother was there shouting for me to come help. All I wanted to do was keep my family safe. She told me I had to do something. I had to get something to tie my father up. She and Grandma used both of her arms to pin his wrist down to the ground. His hands bled weakly. My grandma used every inch of her strength to simultaneously pin him and stop him. She also tried to hold the blood flow. He thrashed slowly beneath them. His movements were almost languid, easy. I couldn't tell if it was a struggle for them to keep him down or... I don't know. As I ran to the garage, I saw the gun on the ground with my dad's severed finger nearby. I kicked it out of reach before returning slowly with the rope. My grandma used to tie the garage. Mom tied the knots. And my grandma, she really tried talking to my dad. It's one of the few times in my life I ever saw her as the woman who once changed his diapers. She was so soothing, so tender. Her constant muttering, "Everything will be okay, my little boy." She seemed so fragile. She was scared for him. My mom just did everything in her power to wrestle some safety out of the moment. Only once his arms were secured behind his back and she was confident he wasn't breaking free, she stood back. She put her hands behind her and she started to immediately hunch forward and sob. Call an ambulance. Grandma told me. She walked into the other room to get my sister. Before I got to the phone, I briefly hugged my mom, who didn't seem to notice. Then I glanced at my dad. My dad who didn't look at anything at all. His dead eyes gazed vacantly as if nothing had nothing. He only fought to free his arms. When he finally looked at me, it was no different than how he looked at a floor or how he looked at a wall. I did not go to school the next day. Some guys from the government came to take my dad and my mom. They ordered me to my room and she asked 1,000 questions. Their replies were short, stern. Everything I managed to overhear were just a few muffled phrases. Please stay put, ma'am. Someone will be in contact with you shortly. When I ran back to my window, looking at them walk down the driveway, and they all wore masks, one of them saw me staring, I swear. I swore he was going to wave at me, but he didn't. There was biohazard symbols on their clothes. I recognized them from school. After they left, Mom focused on dinner, cooking for me and my sister. She kept close to me and the family the whole time, barking anxious questions wherever I tried to leave the room. Where are you going? I'm just going to the bathroom. Oh, okay then. Felt like she was painting normality onto tissue paper. So desperately afraid of breaking it. I tried my best to seem like I was okay, but the last thing I wanted was to feel like I was some kid who needed his mommy. We talked about things that were mundane, mostly things that were hard for both of us to talk about, but the atmosphere seemed to change. Did your father, when you were hunting a few months back, what did you do with the meat? I don't know. I shrugged. Dad always takes care of it. He always took care of that. Why? Well, the men who took him had a whole bunch of questions about it. Have you done your homework? The teacher told me they would send you a few assignments that were online. And just like that, the pretense of normality came back. But I was left wriggling, feeling in my stomach. It didn't go away. In fact, it grew worse until I found myself in bed, rolling side to side, thinking about Mom's question. The men who bundled Dad off, they hadn't seemed like the kind who would mess around. They must have some idea what was going on. So why did Mom ask me about the meat? On some level, I knew that the moment she asked me, it was relevant. Dad loved to hunt. He always brought meat to parties and barbecues and everything around the neighborhood, so wasn't it obvious? He'd brought something back from the woods, hadn't he? I hadn't gone hunting in a long time. Well, it was nearly 3 months. Every time he asked, I'd refused, and he knew why. On the very last trip, Dad shot 3 deer. We only brought back 2. One for us, one for the town barbecue. The third he shot, but he left on the forest floor, because by the time it had died, I was pale and shaking, and even Dad couldn't keep a tremor from his voice. Neither of us has expected a deer to stand up on its hind legs, walk towards us like a man, its gait heavy and broken. It lumbered over the forest floor. And it had kept coming, even Dad had shot it 6 times. One of the rounds struck in the head, but still it shambled forward on 2 misshapen legs as its brain painted the ferns in pestilent gray. When it finally fell, even Dad had gone pale, and in a silent aftermath, I had gone off sick into the brush. After that, we cut the trip short. Dad walked me gently back to the truck, where 2 deer we had shot before had trussed earlier that day, waiting in the back of the pickup. I don't think either of us remembered they were there until later. He asked me if I wanted to go hunting with him every weekend after, but he never seemed surprised when I make an excuse. The only time we talked about it was not long after the barbecue when he drove me to school one day. He didn't deal with it head on, I remember. He skirted around the topic. He'd asked if I wanted to head out with him, or sometime. Sorry, I went a paragraph down. So anyway, to summarize again, they killed 2 deer that were perfectly normal. And then while they were on their hunting trip, a 3rd deer stood up on both of its back legs and walked towards them like a human man. And they shot it like 8 times. And it finally died, and they just both left with the other 2 deer still in the back of their truck and just went home because they were fucking traumatized. So that's where we're at. My father skirted the topic. Sometimes deer get sick, he told me. A little like old folks do. You remember Grandpa? You see, Grandpa got real scary towards the end, didn't he? Well, deer get sick like that too, and, well, we don't have to worry. Same way you couldn't catch what Grandpa had, you know? Oh, we can't catch what the deer have. Us humans are safe. Just, I guess it's just one of them uncomfortable parts of nature. It'd come out of the blue. At least it seemed like it. Figured like it was Dad's way of trying to get me back on board with hunting, I think. I knew he liked me going with him. I liked it too, but at least I liked it until I seen that deer walk on towards me on 2 legs. But lying on my back that night, after Mom got to sleep, I started to wonder if maybe he hadn't really been trying to convince me. Maybe he carried a little doubt in himself. Maybe he carried something about what he was going to do. Was he trying to convince himself it was okay? 2 deer. I breathed. I tried to remember what they'd been like. I hadn't checked them after we got in the truck. I mean, why would I? It seemed like normal. We tied them down and hadn't really been paying attention, but hunting, I've been doing that since I was 7. It had been automatic. I had known what it had been like to be looking for, so I squirmed beneath my sheets. I tried hard to remember every detail of that trip. I tried to remember what was the first 2 deer Dad had shot were like. They'd gone down so quick. They were normal. Grandpa had been sick with Alzheimer's for a long time before he got scary, right? I had to figure it could be true for those 2 deer. Who was it to say that the only one that was sick was on their hind legs that day? I could have forced these thoughts in my head with a crowbar. At some point, I just accepted I wasn't getting any sleep that night, and I settled to torture myself. Dad had an old freezer by the shed, and sometimes he kept meat in there. Not for long, and usually not for eating. He used for things he wanted to skin, make a trophy out of. Rarely did Mom see. But if the deer weren't in the freezer, in the kitchen, or in the garage, they might have been in the shed. If I opened that chest and saw 2 deer bodies in there, that meant whatever was around and making people hurt themselves could not have been from our little hunting trip. I knew it. So I snuck into my room as quietly as I could. Mom was on the phone with Grandma. Grandma was crying. I stopped briefly by her door and listened to see if maybe they knew something I didn't. But after she started talking about how scared she was, I felt terrible and just moved on. At least it meant she was too busy to notice me creeping down the stairs. Alright, just as another catch up, obviously shot the deers. There were 3 deers. One of them stood up on their hind legs. They brought 2 home. The kid is now trying to check. Did my dad serve the town deer meat that was infested with whatever made this deer stand up on 2 legs and walk like a human being? Because everyone in town is losing their minds and killing themselves. So now this kid is like, please let this not be my fault, and let this not be my dad's fault. And so he's going to check a deep freezer that his dad keeps secret to try and make sure there's 2 deer in them. That's all. And his mom and grandma are still like consoling over dad in the hospital, who is losing his mind. So, happy. I never liked the shed at the end of the yard. It was rarely used, even by my dad, who kept the lawnmower and some old junk in there. It wasn't the type of place you kept food, but I had this feeling that he didn't want to keep the deer in there. He definitely keep the deer in there that we got. He would definitely keep the deer that we got meat from hunting in there. As I opened the back door, I looked over the shadow-covered yard, and I found myself thinking about the tunnel. What I'd seen. Remember, he saw a man that was cut in half, still wandering? Yep. With everything that had happened since, I'd done a good job of convincing myself it never really happened. The man with no legs who dragged himself out of the darkness had become little more of a half-remembered nightmare from my childhood. A moment at a time that was incompatible with all logic, all reason, but suddenly, in that moment, it was back with me. All emotions, thoughts raced through my head as if I'd stared down his rotten flesh and glazy eyes again. The walk to the shed was not easy. I fought the urge to turn the entire way around, but each step was like walking on the feet made of lead. Sorry? Got a burp. At the door, I paused my hand poised at the lock. The house seemed so distant behind me. I became so painfully aware that nobody knew I was alone here in the dark. Inside it was nearly pitch black. My phone helped me light it up a little, but I didn't touch the nearby switch in case Mom saw it from the window. Cobwebs hung low from the ceiling and shadows crawled across the floor. As I watched, I moved closer to the freezer. The entire time I was expecting something to happen. I kept imagining that deer rising from beneath the lid, pushing the freezer lid open to stand unnaturally on its hind legs, look down on me with its same dead eyes I'd seen in my father. The thought scared me. I nearly hyperventilated myself. But before I had time to worry about any of that, I found my hands on the freezer latch. I pushed it open and looked inside. Maybe everything will go all right. Maybe everything will be fine. I pushed it open and looked inside. The misty vapors cleared to reveal a pile of meat and fur encrusted with ice. There was only one deer head visible. I so badly wanted confirmation that there were 2 animals in there. Please, please. This is the reminder because it can get a little misconstrued. He wants to make sure there's 2 deer inside of this freezer, because if there's only 1 deer inside this freezer, it means his father cooked the second deer for everybody in the town. And at the original barbecue, everybody ate the second deer. So if this first deer is in here, and this kid is like, oh fuck, if there's not 2 deer, my dad served everyone potentially disgusting parasite meat. Anyway, I wanted confirmation that there was 2 animals in there, and I took a deep breath and reached in. I tried to pry some of it loose. Some of it came away. Sounds like duct tape, almost. How deep I rooted my hands in the muzzle of that bone and the antlers and the rock hard flesh. I never saw a sign of a second deer. Had Dad really served everyone's sick meat? Was that really why Riley Sitkins, Mr. Straub, all those people? Is it really why all of them killed themselves? The thought made me sick. I slammed the freezer shut. I walked back to the door in a daze, trying with all my might to swallow a painful weight that settled in my gut. And I had 1 foot outside the freezer, or I had 1 foot outside when the freezer door rattled against its latch. The entire world spun around me, and my heart sank. My skin froze in a sensation that was growingly, increasingly familiar. I turned and faced the sound. Both my hands braced against that door. But I watched a hatch slam shut into the lock once more. The light, the chest. It came on for a briefest moment. I glimpsed the thrashing fur, teeth, hooves. Then it happened again, and again, and again. And each time I saw bits of hoof, bone, strains muscular. It frightened me so deeply I fell down onto my ass. I didn't even realize. When the latch finally broke away, the lid, it flew open and stayed there. Light poured out of the box and I waited, breath held, for that thing to emerge. Came roaring out of sight and bared down towards me with unnatural legs, but nothing happened. The silence stretched on for what seemed like an eternity, until, at last, there was a crash, louder than anything before. The entire freezer rocked back and forth slowly, fell over. The deer, or parts of it, fell out with a hard, wet. Bits of its chin and face splattered against the hard, packed ground, sending shards of meat and bone skating across the floor, melting in streaks of blood. Some of them even reached my feet. The thing inside moved with the sound of snow crunching beneath your feet. Its thick neck, broken head twisting side to side, scanning the shed exterior with faulty eyes. I'd never seen anything before move like that. Not anything before or since. This is worse than the man in the tunnel. Worse by 1,000 times. The deer was still mostly frozen, but some impossible force was making fight to crystallize water in its own cells. Its skin rippled like tissue, and its muscles cracked and crunched as they tried to flex and contract. It lifted its head and tried to scream. The breathy sound that left its fuzzy black lips made my heart skip beats. While my bladder emptied. I couldn't help it. I couldn't stop myself. When I looked down and saw pieces of melting flesh start to writhe and wriggle, I tried with all my might to stifle the cry, but it still escaped as a desperate, high-pitched one. The deer turned its head towards me with a violent swing. Another breathy shriek. It began to thrash its stiff and frozen legs in a terrifying attempt to get closer. To say it had a predatory look would be inaccurate. Anyone who's seen a predator in action knows that nature is mostly indifferent when it kills. A bear tears into its prey with the same look as opening a McDonald's bag. Predators don't hate the things they hunt, But this thing, I could feel its hatred, its malice. It was nothing like what I'd seen in my dad's eyes, or even the eyes of the man in the tunnel. But it had spent months in that box, hadn't it? This was the disease. When you skip 3 months ahead, anger, hatred. Jesus Christ. I couldn't even say if it was gonna eat me. That's what you think when you see a zombie, right? Right? It's gonna take me. Just one big bite. But this frozen clump of hair and meat baring its lips, it dragged itself across the floor with an expression like a murderous fucking rage. The look of someone ready to beat another living thing to death using its own hands. Unable to face it a moment longer, I dragged myself to my feet and fled. This is a fucking crazy line. Take in the impact of this. Until unable to face the moment one moment longer, I dragged myself back to my feet and fled. Shutting my eyes, I entered the cold night air. I made 3 steps into the night before I slammed into my dad. It was like I'd run full speed into a tree. I bounced back and hit the earth, pain flaring up from my coccyx as my father loomed over me. He felt cold for just a brief moment where I touched him. My mind blocked out the sound of something hideous. It was scrambling behind me, the deer, and the entire world narrowed until it was just the face of the man who had raised me, looking down with pale, dead eyes. Dad, he swallowed and briefly examined his own hands, just like this. I think I'm dead, he muttered, as almost talking to himself. When did I die? I pulled myself up and grabbed his hands. He was so cold, but his pulse was racing. I could even see his veins. They were throbbing, sickeningly. Dad, are you okay? They told me I'm sick. He sat with his eyes gazing vacantly at the empty space behind me. Son, I think that's right. But there's more. He looked at me. The intensity of his pale gaze was so powerful. I let his hand go and he took a step back. For the first time in my entire life, I was scared of my father. I'm not alone in here, he said. His voice was pleading for help. And slowly his expression twisted into a grotesque mask of agony, desperation. Jesus Christ, it's not just me in here. I tried to move, but he was a big man, and he wrapped his arms around me like steel beams. Dad, I cried, struggling to pull myself loose as he sobbed louder and louder. Dad, Jesus, please, you gotta let me go. The shed door burst open. I managed to twist myself around just enough so I could see what came out. I felt an urgent terror crawling up my flesh. The deer had pulled itself loose from the freezer, finally. It stood in the doorway on 2 legs. Its body looked so wrong in all that posture, like when you twist the limbs around a doll. It was probably not far from the truth now that I'm thinking about it. My father didn't react. But I began to scream as the nightmare coalesced around me. Father gripping, holding me places that horrible thing lurched towards me. It moved like claymation, like a puppet gone wrong. But it was quicker. As each step brought us closer, I found myself losing what control I had. I started to scream. I started to shriek. I beat my father with my fist, but he didn't budge, not even an inch. I clenched my hands, they just bounced right off his strong shoulders. It was as if I was trying to hurt a punching bag. I started to swear too. I started to scream things that were so bad, and then they were worse. And then I'm not even sure that I could blame other people for putting those words into my head, but I told my dad I hated him. I called him a son of a bitch. I called him even worse. All that commotion, it finally got the attention of the others. Neighbors. All their lights started coming on, and my mom emerged from the house, the back door wrapping her robe, and around herself she squinted at us in the dark. "What the hell is going on?" she cried as she stumbled towards us. But I swear to God, when she saw that deer, she started screaming too. I don't know what I thought the other people saw or what they would have thought appearing. Us two, three, half dozen people stumbling out in the open lawns, peering over waist-high fences. I'd stopped the slow but inevitable onslaught of that monster. I didn't know such thing. I had to listen to their confused shouts and cries while gesturing, begging for help. The entire time, the sound of the creature over my shoulder getting fucking closer and closer. Meanwhile, my hands, they tried to pry my father away from him and his thick arms, but each time I got leverage over him, he flexed a little harder. His grip tightened around me, and he was muttering something. God damn it, he was muttering something in my ear the whole time, but I couldn't hear it. And finally, my mom screamed. She ran, swinging an old rake. Behind me, I heard the impact, the splintering of the wooden handle. Then she stumbled backwards. I had to twist myself to get a good look at that deer that was now just 6 or 7 feet away from me. God damn it, the spokes of the rake were sticking out of its face. The monster looked right back at me and opened its mouth. And I swear to fucking God that it was gonna talk. That deer was gonna talk to me. But right then someone shouted, "For the love of God, Alice, get away from that fucking thing." Alice was my mother's name. She fell to the floor just seconds before a goddamn explosion broke the night, silencing all voices and shattering that deer's head like a crystal ball hitting the ground. My heart raced so fast that I thought for a moment I was going to die. I looked down and Dad, he finally heard. I finally heard what he'd been mumbling this whole time. "It's in us, it wants us, it's 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 in us, it's inside of us, it wants us, it's in us, it wants us." There isn't much of Dad these days. I get to visit a couple times. Fuck, that did a lot of good. As I'm concerned, he died that day in the kitchen when he tried to shoot himself. They're treating us in this quote-unquote special hospital. Mom was real upset about the visitations because they're limited, but I think it's probably for the best. See, her and my sister tested clean. Most people actually did. I didn't. See, my mom snuck me this phone a couple weeks ago, and I've been using it to write. The funny thing is that one of the orderlies saw me on it a couple days ago, and they just laughed at me. I think that maybe they think the government aren't too worried about this. What are they going to believe? First, I didn't get really why they saw actually put me down. I think whenever I got to the part about the man, half his body cut off and walking through the train, they probably thought I was crazy. So they didn't really care. They just gave up. Still, I gotta try. Partially, I want to protect people, but Dad certainly did. I think most of the infected want to protect people too, and that's why they kill themselves. They want out. See, the voice that this illness is, it's like something in your brain, like a book. It's like a book that's being dipped in motor oil. You try to remember, but you can't. So you just want to give in. You just want to hand it all over. You just want to let your body do whatever it does. In hindsight, I probably should have let my dad kill himself. What he went through was, well, it's probably a lot worse than what we do. I sometimes think about going to his room with a pillow. But as for me, infection's still in its early phase, I think. See, it takes everyone different. With me, it's taking its time. I can just feel it under there. Growing. It wants me to write this. I think that's why I am. It wants me to. This sickness, it lives out in the woods. Parts in the soil where the sun hasn't shone in a million years. Where you could walk from Appalachia to Glasgow. Pangea. I've been fumbling around there since then. The brains of small things. It's getting closer. That's it. That's it.
Trying to go hunting, bro?
Yeah, you're trying to go kill a deer that stands up on two legs, bro.
Jesus.